This is Terror Tale.
Hi guys, I'm Tim of the Terror Tales podcast, and we're bringing you TV Tuesdays as a separate side episode, so that every week on Tuesdays I will bring you another episode of a horror show season, and I haven't decided if it's going to be full series like the same thing we do with Terror Tales movie franchises, but what we are going to do is I'm going to do the first season of Hannibal, and I will decide from there, and I'll let y'all know and see how y'all think about it. So just let me know. But to start off, my foray into horror was that as I've said in the podcast before, I'm not a giant fan of horror when I was a kid. Like, I was terrified, easily scared. So, more into my adults, I started liking horror more. And now, I just can't get enough of it. And the same thing happens with Hannibal Lecter. I didn't really get into Hannibal Lecter until I was an adult because I could understand more and could appreciate a lot of the fine elements in the dialogue, in the character elegance, and just everything about it. Like, even the gruesome horror, in a very weird way, has its own artistic style, especially through the show we're about to discuss today. So that's always something interesting, guys, and I really do hope you guys like this. So I may not do like a full thing like we do with Terror Tales today, but I will give you special details, read the plot summary, and might do the episode all the way. And if I do, I'm hoping you guys will like it, and I just want all the feedback you guys can give us at the Terror Tales Instagram and the Terror Tales Twitter or the Terror Tales Facebook. You can always email me or Phil directly also, and we have an email for the Terror Tales podcast at gmail.com. So what we do with that, guys, we love feedback. So just please, if you do like it and you want to tell us something you liked, something you didn't like, if you want to choose, say, a horror show that I can cover that you'd like me to cover, I will. I'd love to do it. You just gotta let me know so that I can get into it. So what we're gonna start off with here today, guys. So the first episode of Hannibal Season 1 is called Aperitif, which is actually an alcoholic drink taken before a meal to stimulate the appetite. And every episode is some form of French drink, food, anything, and the whole series is just kind of like the episodes are named after dishes in different cultures, which is kind of interesting, but that's because Hannibal, the cannibal, likes to make elegant foods with unconventional meats. So our cast goes as Hugh Dancy as Will Graham, Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal Lecter, Lawrence Fishburne as Jack Crawford, and we got Alana Bloom, Beverly Katz, Brian Zeller, and Jimmy Price are the character names. I did not write down the actor names. So, what we'll go with is we're going to start the plot. Alright, so FBI investigator Will Graham, who is haunted by his ability to empathize with serial killers and mentally recreate their crimes with vivid detail, is drawn into an investigation of a series of missing college girls by Special Agent Jack Crawford, who has special interest in Graham's ability. Crawford and Graham interview the parents of the latest girl to go missing, only to discover that her body has been returned to her bedroom. Graham suspects it is an apologetic gesture from the killer. Crawford, by recommendation of Dr. Alana Bloom, enlists the help of noted psychiatrist Dr. Hannibal Lecter, who takes a keen interest in the case, and particularly in Will Graham, in whom he senses a like mind. Another girl, Cassie Boyle, is found. This one is mounted on top of a deer's head in an open field, with her lungs removed. Graham is convinced it is the work of someone else. a negative design to show him the positives of the other crimes. Dr. Lecter is shown preparing himself a meal with human lungs, and FBI crime scene investigator Beverly Katz, finds a shred of metal from a pipe threader on the clothes of the returned girl, which leads Graham and Lecter to a construction site that employs Garrett Jacob Hobbs, who fits Graham's profile. Dr. Lecter secretly makes a phone call to Hobbs, warning him that they know. Lecter and Graham arrive at Hobbs' residence just as Hobbs kills his wife. He is about to cut his daughter's throat, where Graham shoots him dead, but he does get off where he cuts her throat open, and later they have Graham and Lecter sit with the unconscious girl in her hospital room. And just going off this episode is just... it's one of the best pilots I've ever watched, especially during pilot season, especially like I told you how much that I loved the Hannibal Lecter books, the Hannibal Lecter movies. I did not watch the original Manhunter with Brian Cox as Hannibal Lecter, but I did watch all of Anthony Hopkins' portrayals, and Mads Mikkelsen, I really hope I'm not butchering his name, they both just have a certain poise when it comes to the character that it's menacing without being menacing, and nobody knows what's going on, even when he throws hints out like he's throwing candy. And so that is just an interesting aspect in itself. Now, like I said, I might do a longer episode if I do decide to break down the whole visual aspect as best I can of painting a visual word picture for you guys. That will probably go into more of the day. So I will take a break, and if there's more to this episode, you'll know. All right.
Hey guys, I'm Phil from the Terror Tales podcast, here to tell you all about Anchor. Haven't heard of it before? Well, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. For starters, it's completely 100% free, which means you don't need your mom's credit card to start your very own podcast. Anchor gives you access to special creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast straight from your smartphone or PC. Anchor even distributes the podcast for you, so you can be heard on wherever you get your podcasts. You can even make money with no minimums on how many people tune in. It's basically everything you need to get the ball rolling. If you want to get started today making your own podcast, just download the free Anchor app or head on over to anchor.fm to get started. Remember guys, that's anchor.fm, or download the free app to get started today. I'm Phil, and this is from the Terror Tales, signing off.
Alright guys, well I guess I am breaking down the episode today, and welcome back from that break while we do this. Now this might not be a very long episode, because even when I break these down, they're only 40-minute episodes, so trying to do it scene by scene would just take too much time. That's like an hour and a half of prep time, so I'm going to do my best to break down every scene best I can. So our episode starts off with a house swarming with FBI, blood splattered everywhere. 2 bodies are being zipped up. Our main character is in the middle of the room, takes a pensive breath. You see what looks like a windshield wiper reversing the events that transpired. All while Will Graham, who is our titular character, I apologize for my fuck up, he's saying, "This is my design," and he goes by and tells you step by step how he got into this person's head, of how they killed their victims, and how they got away with it. So then he proceeds to detail that to his classroom, and then says that everybody has tried to kill somebody, like in their mind, more or less, is that they've thought about killing somebody. And then after that, Will is introduced to Jack by Jack introducing himself and saying, "I'm the head of the FBI," and he says, "We've met, and it was about a disagreement of the naming of a museum." And so after that, he's talking to Will a little bit, explaining that Will is on the spectrum for Asperger's and autism, and more or less saying is that he can see, he's got empathy for serial killers and sociopaths and psychopaths, and so that's when Jack says, can he borrow his imagination? So then we come up on a crime board of 8 victims, all of the same hair color, height, weight, eyes. They roughly all look the same. And so what goes on with this is that the killer is trying to find his golden ticket, more or less, is the one victim he models all of his other victims on. And that is very common in real serial killers. But so with that, guys, then we've got is a tribute, as I said. So now we're going to Duluth, Minnesota, to the last victim's house, where Jack and Will are questioning the parents to try to get a better idea of what's going on. What was the girl like? What was the last girl's? Like how she acted, how she was, so that they can get a better idea of how to track her down, or to do a pretty decent profile. And so after that, they're going through the house, and after the questions are done, Will says that the girl was abducted from that house. So what happens with that is Jack calls in his forensics team, a photographer, and says the house is a crime scene. So while Will is doing that and breaking it down, they find the victim in the house, like in her bed. They're trying to tell the dad he's got to leave, and then Jack gives Will the room so that he can try to break down what happened with his empathy and serial killers, and that this is my design. And so while he's doing that, he gets halfway through it, finds that she was choked, and then we have Beverly Katz, which is a crime scene investigator who apparently did not want to listen to what Jack said about, nobody's allowed in there yet until he's done. And so she's just trying to talk and be sociable with Will, but we all know that Will has a problem with being socially, ready for people. He is just not a people person. So with that, they also find that the killer was trying to undo what he had already done, given that he already killed her. So now we have Will is driving home. He runs across a stray dog, and he gives it a bath after he waits for it to come to him, and he names him Winston. Will already has 5 other dogs that he has adopted. The next scene we go to is a dream sequence where Will is laying down. He rolls over and he sees the body of Elise Nichols, which was the victim I was telling you about, in her bed. And so she starts floating. So after we cut from that, Jack is hard knocking on a bathroom door. Will is trying to get his mind right again. So while he's washing his face, he puts his head in the sink full of water, and so you start to see blood just encompassing everywhere in that sink for a very cool looking shot. So while that's going, he is very uncomfortable, and Jack just goads him. So he said, they're saying, you must know something of him because you said this is an apology. You must know something. And so he goads the answer out of him and says, because he couldn't show her that he loved her, so he put the corpse back. Jack says, well, being sensitive doesn't make him a psychopath, or it's not a normal trait of a psychopath. So with that, he calls them a sensitive psychopath. And so now Jack tries to talk with Dr. Alana Bloom, who is a colleague of Will's and is Will's friend. So he's trying to see if she'll do the one that will make his psychological profile for him, so that, with Will's psyche, that he is not getting too close to where it might, make him snap mentally. So Alana explains that he should not put Will in the field for fear of Will's sanity. And she pretty much says, don't do it. Jack doesn't listen. So while they're going over the evidence of everything and trying to explain everything to come to a better conclusion the best they can, Will comes to that conclusion that the killer is eating parts of the victims. So now we cut to our title character eating in a nice suit, elegant music in the background. Which, if we all remember, we've all seen Hannibal, or Hannibal Lecter, Silence of the Lambs, all that. We know that that's just human body parts cooked. Now, he's never been opposed to eating it raw, but I know that he likes to eat it and cook it properly. So after that, we cut to a man crying with his therapist, which is Dr. Hannibal Lecter, as I said, the title character. After the session, Jack shows up to ask Hannibal to help keep Will's mind in check, so more or less he's going to do the psychological profile for Will, and it's on a referral from Dr. Alana Bloom, as I mentioned. And so now, Hannibal will be having banter with Will, trying to get more answers out of him, and then while they're talking, Will's very uncomfortable, doesn't seem happy to have the conversation. Hannibal is just doing what a therapist does and giving him insight into his own head. And so Will is like, whose psychological profile are you working on? And he looks at Jack and says the same thing, and then sits there and says, do not psychoanalyze me. Do not like me when I'm psychoanalyzed. And it is just, he does not like people. And this one right here is the most that Will is unstable with certain things throughout most of the series. Is always his first episode. So it's very hard to feel like they are pushing him way too hard. So once Will leaves because he's pissed off because he has to go do a lecture on psychoanalyzing after being psychoanalyzed. And so while Hannibal and Jack are talking, Hannibal explains that Will has what's known as pure empathy. He can assume anyone's point of view. So now we cut to another scene where they're cutting to crows in a field where there is a stag head with antlers, and there's a body placed on these antlers. And the killer has been the killer for the original killings that we were talking about is called the Minnesota Shrike. And so Will is looking at this one over, explains everything about it, but it is a copycat. Then you cut to another scene of Hannibal, who is preparing the lungs for a meal. After an intense dream, after an intense dream, Will wakes up to see Hannibal showing up on his doorstep to say that Jack is disposed in court, so today you'll be with me on the investigation. So they'll sit, have breakfast. Will says he does not find Hannibal all that interesting. Hannibal says you will. He tries to have friendly conversation while eating breakfast that he cooked himself, which we all know might be human food, human meat. But so then after that, we're cutting again to where they're sitting in a car, and Hannibal is saying, I've always wanted to see what the FBI does when they're not kicking doors in. Will says, you're lucky we're not going house to house. And then they're talking about they found pipe shavings in the victim's shirt when they were in the bed. It was a pipe shaving from a construction site. So with that, they're going to every construction site that uses that pipe see if they can narrow down their search for the killer. So while going through all the files at that particular construction site that they show up on, they're going through all the files. They're taking every file with them back to the FBI. Will stumbles upon a name of Garrett Jacob Hobbs, and he has a partial address, doesn't have all of his information on there, so Will narrows that down in his head and thinks that killer is fit for his profile. So while they're getting the rest of the stuff, Hannibal tries to go outside with the box, starts dropping files to be not so subtle. So he goes back inside, gets a tissue, looks for the phone number for Garrett Jacob Hobbs, dials it, calls to the house, talks to Garrett's daughter Abigail, and she hands it to her dad. Hannibal says, "This is a courtesy call, and we'll probably never meet." And he says, "Are you listening?" He's like, "Yes." He's like, "They know," pretty much saying is that the FBI is on to him. And my honest opinion on that is probably with Hannibal, just he likes to, ensue chaos and move the narrative in his point of view. So it's always kind of fun for him to do whatever he's got to do. So pretty much after this, we cut to Will standing, his shirt's covered in blood, his glasses have got blood on them. We go back and we see the windshield wiper again. Then it goes back to they pull up to Garrett Jacob Hobbs' house. The moment they get close to the door, Hobbs is throwing his wife, who he just slit her throat, throws her outside to get her, pretty much get his point across after he kills his wife. So Will breaks in with a gun, seeming very not so steady and a little nervous with it. But Hobbs has a knife to his daughter's throat, and he starts cutting a little bit, so Will shoots. Abigail drops to the floor. Will shoots again. He unloads the rest of the magazine into Garrett Jacob Hobbs, who sits in a corner of his kitchen cabinets, dying. So Will is freaking out, trying to save Abigail. And with that, he's freaking out, and so Hannibal comes, being used to be a medical surgeon, so he's going to be trying to be a doctor and save the girl's life. Will goes outside to get a breather. He just had to kill a man. So now we are getting to the point of Jack is going up to the lecture hall where Dr. Alana Bloom is teaching and asks where Will is, and she says, "You told me he wouldn't get too close." Jack looks kind of mad, all this. So now we cut to Will fast walking through a hospital room where he is trying to get to the room of, as I said, young Abigail Hobbs. He gets to the room, sees her in her bed, in her hospital bed, all put up to machines to breathe, be all fine, and Hannibal's there, asleep, and so the episode concludes with those two sitting in that room. And there we have it, everybody. I hope you did enjoy that. I told you it was going to be a short episode. I was going to do my best to make it as long as possible. But I really hope you guys enjoyed that. And we'll come back again for next week for episode 2 on Tuesday. As I said, this is going to be a new staple of TV Tuesdays. And I really hope everybody has enjoyed their time with Terror Tales for an extra day. Hi, I'm Tim of That News Guy Podcast, and we're going through a revamp. We're going from everything about news, media, and everything that everybody likes to geek out about to film reviews. So if you'd like to come and hear me and Justin talk about our favorite films and your favorite films and our opinions in between with some good comedy, come join us every Thursday at That News Guy Podcast. We also have a Facebook page and an Instagram. So come join us and have fun, and let's get geeky about films.
This has been a Nerd Lab Media production. Come join us on our social pages on Facebook and on Discord. We hope to see you there. Thank you.